Hey, everybody. I want to take a moment to give a special thanks to Miss Leslie Bankston here at Bankston Law Firm. She has opened up her beautiful office for us to use as a studio for the next few episodes. Mr. Otto Goodwin, thank you for coming, letting us in the building, showing us around, giving us amazing ideas of where to shoot from with the best lighting, the best camera angles. We appreciate it so much. If you or your family have any need for a law firm or prosecutor, land successions, any legal advice, please do not hesitate to come visit them over here at Bankston Law Firms in Albany, Louisiana. Again, from the bottom of our heart, God's Coffee Call thanks you so much. Welcome back to another edition of God's Coffee Call. I am your host, Brooke Kinchin, and today I have a very special guest with me. She is not only a guest speaker, but she's my niece, Miss Jade Taylor.
Hi, everybody.
This is my Jade. Jade is not mine. She's actually my cousin's daughter, but Jade was the first kid in my life that kind of made me think, man, I want to have kids one day. Like you, like you just have a special place in my heart, and you were at my house as much as you were at your house or your Nana's house. And I was single at the time and didn't have anything else to do in life but hang out with you and your sister. And so you two definitely hold a special place in my heart, along with Pierce, but he didn't want to hang out with us girls very much. So just you. But I remember you from the day you were born to who you are now, and just watching you blossom into the woman that you are now. Just does my heart good. I'm gonna promise that I'm gonna try not to cry during this one, because this is special. This is our Thanksgiving edition, and when we were getting ready to do our Thanksgiving episode, I was just sitting and planning, and I thought, I want to have some kind of family, some kind of something on focus on the family. And I just reached out to you, and I expected you to be like, no, that's not happening. And when I sent the text message and been like, hey, will you share your story? The next thing I text you was, to see your face right now. Because I was like, sure that you were about to
and I was just like, little does she
tell
know.
me all for sure. But little did I know you responded back, yes. And so, and we'll get to that, because God was doing some stuff in your life. So thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
I'm very happy to be here.
All right. Well, let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about your childhood a little bit. Tell us a little bit about it.
And I will say, I've never unpacked all of this. So bear with me.
Okay. You're okay. You're great.
Okay. So childhood, it was normal, my parents were together, Christian household, went to church every Sunday, Wednesday, whenever they made us go. But I'm glad they made us go,
You have an older brother? You're older, or Pierce is older?
Pierce is older.
Okay.
I have an older brother and a younger sister.
So you're the middle child. Okay.
Yes. And then they never fought around us. I will say that. My parents I've never seen them one time fight in front of us. And then I was like 9 or 10, and they were like, okay, we're not going to be together anymore. So we were all like, what do you mean you're not going to be together? Like, y'all seem fine. So I think that's when, it really changed for us. Mm-hmm. We're like, this is not.
Because up to that point, it was like perfect little family.
Just normal.
Yeah, just normal family life.
And then, so they got divorced in 2011. And then in 2013, that's when our mom went to jail. All
right. And you were 9 when they divorced? When they separated?
In 2011, yes.
Okay.
9 or 10.
And so a couple years later, your mom...
Within 2 years, mom went to jail.
Okay.
Which we didn't really know why. Mm-hmm. We just knew she'd gotten into some things and put herself there.
Right. Got you.
And then while she was in jail, I remember going to a little camp called God's Girls. Mm-hmm. I cannot remember the lady who was over there.
Miss Tessie?
Yes.
Miss Tessie.
And the thing I remember about it most was there was a time when, before we were supposed to perform for, the parents who came or whatever, but you came, so glad you were there. But, and anyway, it was just us and her, and she made us line up, and music was playing, it was dark, and she just came to each one of us, and she was like, you're going to go through spiritual warfare. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Okay, thanks for telling me.
Yes.
I was just like, But looking back now, I'm like, wow, she was right.
Right.
So that pretty much sums up like the first part of my childhood. I mean, it was okay.
All right. Tell me, let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
You're 9 years old. Mom and dad never really have fought. They come and tell you we're getting a divorce. And you touched on a little bit. You didn't know why. Talk to me in that 9-year-old head. Like, what is there conversations amongst you and your brothers and
I was
sisters?
just like, wow, we get 2 Christmases.
Okay.
Like, that's what I really...
Because you didn't know what divorce was at the time, right?
Right. I was just like, okay, well, they're not going to be together. I just get to spend time with one parent a week. And I was like, we get every 2 holidays together.
Got you. Because you had no understanding of what the magnitude of what that was and what that was.
I was just like, okay. I don't think it really affected me as much as other things that have happened.
Okay. All right. So mom goes to jail. What are you, because you're a little older now, you're able, 11, 12, somewhere there. You're able to process a little bit, even though you don't know what's going on. Where are you at with that?
And I will say, from being like, when our parents got divorced, I just automatically stepped up. So, I remember like getting up before Pearson and Laney and getting them up. And then I remember like folding their clothes out. I said I wasn't going to cry.
No, it's okay. Because it's part of your story.
Just stuff like that I remember, but... Stop, you're about to cry.
Sorry, here, I told you. This one. Who
cries about that? Why would I cry about that?
Well, because you're 11 and you're doing that. But you had the mindset about you to have to do that.
Yeah.
And to take care of. And you're still taking care of.
And then mom's going to jail was pretty hard because I witnessed her arrest.
Okay.
So.
You were there in that moment.
Well, yeah, we were at our grandparents'.
Okay.
And then knock on the door or whatever, and they're like, is so-and-so here? And I was just sitting on the couch, and they searched the house, and they found her, and then they brought her out, but she never even looked at me or told me bye. Gotcha. So that really, really put a hate in my heart for her. Mm-hmm. But looking back, she was embarrassed. You know?
Yeah.
I thought she just,
Right, because you don't understand, 1, what's going on, 2, why are it happening, 3, why can't you just look at me? And she's got a whole nother world happening outside. Oh, yeah. I
remember like writing her letters, and I'd be like, just mad at her, like, mm-hmm. How could you do that, this and that?
Yeah.
And I held that hate for a long time, but...
And that's okay. Like, that's real, because there's these things that happen outside of our story that doesn't make sense all the time.
Until you look back at
it. And so those emotions and those feelings are real and valid for sure. Yeah. So mom is in jail. You guys are with dad full time now?
Yeah, we would stay with Nana and Papa sometimes, mm-hmm. our grandparents. Mm-hmm. We would stay with them sometimes. I remember staying with you and Aunt Becky.
Just kind of
Aunt Becky.
Yeah,
I say Aunt Becky, but like people don't know who that is. But my Aunt Becky, my mom's sister.
And how was that bouncing from house to house?
It was okay. I just know y'all tried to make us happy.
We did. That was the goal. Like, that was my goal.
I remember Aunt Becky bringing us like to Safari Quest, just trying to have fun and hibachi, just stuff like that. Just little things you could tell they were trying to cheer us up. But
do you think that it helped, or do you think that it hurt?
In the moment, yeah.
Yeah.
But still at night when you lay down,
it didn't. Yeah, it doesn't fill the void. Because none of us were trying to be your mom. Right. None of us are trying to fill that void. We just knew that she needed to work on her stuff and be able to take care of you guys, so that when she did and she was able to come back, that you guys were still as healthy mentally, physically, emotionally as possible for her to be able to step back into that role. Yeah. Because we're such a tight family and we're such a close, your mom and I are only 3 months apart. And so we're 3 months apart, and we were basically raised like sisters. Like that's what we did. And so I say it all the time that you were like my first kid. And even though you weren't mine, I knew I almost felt like I had an obligation to her to take care of you until she could do it. Yeah. And I always tried not to overstep that and overstep those boundaries. And even still now, there are things that I still try to push away and give her that opportunity to do. Right. But that was the goal at the time, is to help your dad as much as possible in the moment of that, while your mom was away taking care of herself. Right. And because we loved you 3, and there was greatness inside of you 3 that we saw. All right. So tell me a little bit, what was it like living with dad without mom?
It was a big change, just seeing him stress, working all day and then coming home and cooking his dinner, Then like, okay, like go take showers, this and that. It was just a change.
Yeah.
But you could tell he was struggling in his own way.
Right.
So.
Okay. And so what happens next? We become just how long?
Dad started drinking a little bit, but we didn't really think nothing of it just because we're like, oh, people have drinks sometimes,
Right.
But Mom had got out of jail, and then we just started going back and forth again,
Right.
just like that.
Just kind of picked up where we left off.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. And then how old are we now? Do you remember kind of?
It had to be like 15, like going into my teenage years is when a lot happened.
All right. So tell us about those years.
Okay. It had to be like 2015 to 16. Dad was drinking, Mom was doing her thing. I remember Dad took me to a doctor. He put me and my siblings all in counseling, which looking back, I was like, I'm glad he did that, because I think that really helped us in some ways. And I stayed in it the most, I think. Even like if Lainey and Pierce quit going, I still went. And I've been to many. Like he even like tried bringing me to different places. And eventually I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, ADHD, just stuff like that. So I let that become my identity. So then of course I was prescribed a medication. And then at that time, had to be sophomore year. We were staying with Dad. Me and my mom got in a lot of fights. So I was kind of like, okay, I just want to live with Dad for a little bit. And I remember staying with Dad a lot, and he would be drinking, but I still wanted to be there to make sure he was okay.
Right.
He didn't go nowhere, and he was
stable
where he was.
Yeah.
And people say when you drink, it's like a spirit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They call like alcohol spirits. So,
right.
Yeah.
A spirit. So I could tell he wasn't who he should have been. Does that make sense? Like, he just became a different person. You could see it in his eyes. It wasn't him. So that brought in a lot. So then I was dealing with like sleep paralysis. But like at the time I was just like, it's just, I was Googling. I was like, oh, I just have sleep paralysis. Like nothing big. But then like I would see stuff in the corner. And I was like, oh my gosh. So like looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was 17, 16, scared of the dark. Like, but really like I would sleep with a cover over my head. Even to this day, I have to have like, when I sleep, my hair has to be over my ear. I think it's just a comfort thing.
Right.
But looking back, that was like spirit, like in my room.
Yeah. Do you remember one of the first times you saw like a spirit? Like or is there an encounter moment that like you just can't get out of your brain that like sticks in there?
The very first one may have been like, I had to be like 10, 11, just seeing something down the hall all the way at the end. I remember just always running down the hall because I was scared. But in the room was just, I was scared all the time.
You could just feel it.
Right, I could feel it. More than see it, I could just feel it. And looking back, I wish I would have went to my dad and been like, Dad, look, I'm seeing stuff, I feel it. But then I didn't want him to be like, oh, it's okay.
Right.
But looking back, I'm like.
Because you feel like people are going to think you're crazy. Like,
right.
I saw somebody in the hall, but there's nobody in the hall.
Looking back, I wish I would have told my dad, and maybe he would have like anointed the room or casted the spirits out or something. Yeah. So that is when we really got into like, that's like when it all really started to hit like a lot of trauma. So
your brother and sister, are they having any of this? Are y'all talking about these things?
I never told them this. Okay. Well, actually, Pierce doesn't know.
Okay.
But I told Lainey just a few weeks ago, and she's like, "Wow, like I've never, thought about that."
Okay.
So just him drinking, the devil was going after him, but also his children. And in the moment, I don't think he really realized it because he was facing his own battles.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, definitely, because. I mean, knowing the backstory and your dad and I, even though your mom and him divorced, we still were close. And so some of the conversations that we would have still in that struggle, that fighting back and forth. And he lived through his own things with his dad and alcoholism and stuff like that.
It's a generational thing. His grandpa was an alcoholic, his father and him. But I will say my dad's the only one trying to break that.
Yeah. All right. So we're teenagers. We're having sleep paralysis. We're seeing things.
And then this was like 2016. I got saved. We went to a thing in Hammond called the Hell House.
Yeah.
We went there, and that's when I got saved. And things were good for about a year or two. And then that's when like I feel like I really started acting out, fighting.
Do you know? I don't want to pass over that. Do you know why you think that all of a sudden that happened? Just Because you didn't, I mean,
What?
you've always been a little bit stubborn. Like, I love you, but you've been a little bit stubborn, just a little bit. Um, but was there anything specific that happened around that time that just made you like fully start lashing out? Or was it all of this stuff that was happening
I think
just
it
had
was
built
just
up?
built up because I was so angry at my mom
Mm-hmm.
and we constantly fighted that it was just, with me and mom, we just fought. But with me and dad, we just pushed it under the rug.
Why do you think that is?
What? Push it
Why do
under
you
the
think you
rug?
push it under the rug with your dad, but you fight with your mom?
Because dad's done that. Like his whole side of the family pushes things under the rug.
Got you.
That was just instilled in him.
Mm-hmm.
But he has worked through that and he is trying to be more open with us. And then mom, you know, I just feel like they talk about everything. Papa's very quick. Her father's very quick to, you know, just want to talk about
Have
things.
an open discussion about it. Okay.
So I think that's when I was like torn in between, like really fighting a lot, you know, like because I couldn't get it out, but then I could get it out.
Right.
So I was very disrespectful to my mother because she wanted to be a friend.
Mm-hmm. And you needed her to be your mom.
Right.
But didn't know how to tell her I need you to be my
Right.
mom. Because up until this point, it was kind of hit or miss kind of with that stuff. Okay. So we're fighting.
I was seeking male attention. This was like sophomore, junior year, just seeking male attention. Any guy who would talk to me, like, oh, yeah.
Even though you have a dad at home.
Right.
Because maybe he wasn't as present because of his alcohol.
He was always, you know, sleeping in the room or doing other things or working.
Right. Yeah,
You
he
know?
worked a lot.
Yeah. Just seeking male attention, fighting. And then junior year is when I dropped out. I told my dad I was going in the military, which I truly had intentions on going. But I didn't make the qualifications because I was on an antidepressant. And the one I was on, you had to be off 4 years. So I dropped out at that point, just working at a grocery store.
I want to say this. I remember the day you told me you were going to the military. And I had mixed emotions. I was happy because I thought, because I could see this downward spiral that was happening in you, this fighting. And Lainey'd come home and tell me about another fight that Jade got into or another argument, somebody else that Jade had told off and stuff. And so I was excited because I thought it's going to give her some discipline that she needs.
Set me straight.
But at the same time, I thought she's got so much anger and so much rage. Is this going to increase it?
Right.
And is this going to cause her to spiral even more? And so I'm not your mom, so I can't tell you, don't do this, do this. You know, like I had no say in it.
Right.
But my heart was like, God, just direct her. Just lead her and direct her the right path, because it could have went really good or it could have been really bad in that balance of finding yourself.
And looking back, I'm glad I didn't go.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't have who I have in my life now.
Yeah.
So.
And so the medications that you had been on disqualified you because you had to be off for so long of it.
Right.
And you've been taking that since you said 10, 11, somewhere around there? In your early teenage
like
years?
2015.
Okay. All right. Got you.
So dropped out, this and that. I got into a few relationships. There was one time I was sexually assaulted. I don't really know the details of that, but it did happen to me.
Right.
It didn't, looking back, I'm like, wow, like that never really should have happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Just in different relationships, verbally abused, sometimes physically abused, but I would fight back. So I didn't really look at it as physical abuse. We were just fighting.
Yeah. Was there anywhere in here where drugs, alcohol, party, any of that part of your aspect, or because you watched it happen, it didn't really?
Right. I've never been the one to want to like go to parties. That's not my thing. I'd rather just be alone. I mean, I've hung out with a few people, smoked weed, got drunk, but I didn't like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's not an alcohol I've been like, oh my gosh, this tastes so good.
Let me just go drink
and
it.
I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's one of my biggest prayers is that me, my sister, my brother, even my dad, that one day we'll taste it and like we'll just
not want it.
Right, exactly. Just not even like it.
Mm.
And I was hanging out with the wrong people, wrong relationships. And I remember there was this one instance I'm going to bring up. I was with this guy and his friend just had got a new Mustang. So he was like, oh, I want to take you on a ride. And I was like, okay, sure. So I get in the backseat of this little Mustang, which is very hard to get in a Mustang for one. And we went like 15 minutes from Albany going towards Killian. And we were in a curve, but he was going like at least 120.
Wow.
Anyway, we were spinning and we hit somebody and they flew in the ditch. And the guy who was driving, he just took off running. So at this point, the cops are behind us and we're running from the cops. So finally, the guy comes to a stop. And I was like 16. I didn't have my wallet with me, my ID, nothing. I don't think I had shoes on. Like that's, and he
Wow.
was like, "Who are all y'all?" Like, of course, he made the driver get out, and he
Right.
arrested him. And I was like, "Oh, I don't have anything with me." Like looking back, I'm so glad. Like God protected me in that moment because I truly could have died.
Yeah.
Looking back at that, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad he didn't. The cop wasn't like, "Hey, call your parents." That
Yeah.
would have been my worst nightmares, calling my dad to come get me from that.
Yo daddy, yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of little instances like that where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, if only if my dad knew what I'm getting into."
Yeah.
But
the Lord kept you and the Lord was with
yeah.
you.
And then even like this, I had to be like 17, 18 at this point. I was still just rebelling, but I was hiding it from my dad. So like I was like, "Oh, I'm going so, you know, going to do this, going to do that." But like I never went and stayed the night places, stuff like that. But before I hit my adulthood, I was just, you know, I let that become my identity, my anxiety, depression, and just like I had suicidal thoughts at this point just because I'm like, I'm always fighting with people. Like, what's my purpose?
Right.
So I remember I was driving by myself and I was just crying, angry. And I was in my little Corolla. Well, no, it was a Saturn, my little Saturn. And I remember going around a curve. It was how it just happened to be not far from where that wreck was. And I knew this deep curve was coming up in Killian. And I was like, I'm just going to drive myself off the road and just kill myself because I don't want to do this no more. And as I'm going, wee you, and I got pulled over. And I'm crying. I'm like, I'm just upset. And he was like, I have 4 daughters. Like, you know, I understand. And I was like, okay, well, do I have to have a ticket? And he was like, yes.
Unfortunately, yes.
So yeah, I had a ticket for that. But looking back, I'm like,
saved your
he was
life.
my angel. Yeah. That man really saved my life.
Yeah, we were talking earlier before we started recording. Someone was in the office where we were, and he was saying, you know, you never know, just that small conversation, that small little instance that something happens that the Lord saves your life. The Lord steps in and intervenes. And the Bible says that we're entertaining angels unaware. And who's to say that that man just wasn't a messenger of the Lord in that moment?
He was like an older man, and I hated that man at that moment. I'm like, he just ruined my plans, and I got a ticket out of this. Are you kidding me?
Right. All right. So what's next?
Moved out at 17, going on 18. I moved out. Got my first apartment by you.
Yeah.
And I remember it was just a different piece. I was kind of scared, you know, just because I've already been through sleep paralysis and seeing things. I was like, I hope that doesn't follow me.
And is that still happening?
No, it has not happened since I moved out my dad's house.
Okay, got you.
So I think it was just in that house.
moment. Okay.
Yeah. So I moved out by y'all. I just kept working, you know, had a few different jobs. I remember just feeling a different peace. Like, not that I healed myself. I know God healed me, but just, I was like, okay, things are getting better.
Way. Yeah, right.
So I moved and I just continued working at Hobby Lobby. And that's when my now sister-in-law, introduced me to Will. So at this point, it was 2020.
COVID.
Yes. And I met Will.
And?
About 4 months later, I got pregnant.
Okay.
But
all right.
I wouldn't trade it for the world, though. I got pregnant and we moved to Walker.
Okay.
We lived in Walker about a year and a half. I don't really know the timing on that. But we moved. And then Legend came early. My son came early. He was born 2 months early, so he was in the NICU. And looking back, I never thought, oh, I'll have like a preterm kid. You know, I was like, oh, I'm going to have the healthiest pregnancy ever. Like looking back, I really should have prayed for myself. Yeah. Of course, like I prayed every night before bed, but it wasn't, you know, to have certain things for my pregnancy. And he came early. And I think that's when God really humbled me because I was like, now I have a kid who can't really fight for himself. Right. You know, so I remember just praying a lot. He was in there a month, just pacing back and forth in the room, praying. I even have a journal I kept. I wrote every day to him. And he got moved around different places in the hospital. And then he got out.
And what happens next?
Okay, so we moved to Independence when Legend was like a year old, right, for his first birthday party. Okay. We were just living there, and then I got pregnant again with my daughter, Liliana. I had her in October, and then me and Will got married in March. Okay. So.
And y'all have a new house?
Yes.
Right? Y'all had moved
had
moved before she got here. That's right.
Yes.
And so where does Jesus kind of step into the scene here in the middle of all of this?
I've known Jesus all my life,
Right.
but truly I've never encountered him
Mm-hmm.
until about this year.
All right, tell us about that.
It was more so me just praying like, God, I want to change, like I don't want to depend on my medication to get me through the days anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I slowly started getting off my medication. I'm almost off of it of 8 years.
Awesome.
That is a really big deal to me. And I told Will, I'm like, I don't know myself off of this medication. I don't know what I'm going to be like. So please brace yourself because I don't know if I'm going to be chaotic or I don't know how I'm going to act. And I was like, just, try and bear with me for this.
So you're slowly weaning yourself off and just praying the whole time, God,
yes,
do some things in me. Do you see?
Because I will say having my kids, as soon as I had my kids, those suicidal thoughts went away.
Mm,
Like I feel like my anxiety went away.
yeah.
I still had depression just from postpartum, but
Right.
I feel like, I know people say this all the time, but my kids really healed me.
Yeah.
God sent them to heal me, and I really believe that because if they weren't here, I know I'd be probably in jail or in the grave.
All right, let's talk about that a little deeper. What do you think? What do you think they healed inside of you? Like what do you think that was missing there, or that was imbalanced, or whatever, that they were able to bring into your life? Peace.
Yeah.
How so?
They just filled me where I needed to be filled. I know that sounds kind of crazy,
No.
but I just needed them.
Yeah.
They gave me the love that I needed, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm able to give them the love that I didn't get.
Right. And kids love unconditionally. Like, we do no wrong in kids' eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree that going back in those times that you just wanted to be loved unconditionally and be loved, but also be able to give love unconditionally, kids offer that in a way that you can't really explain if you don't.
And they
have
forgive
it.
so easy.
Mm-hmm.
You could get onto them, and then 2 minutes later,
You're their best
like,
friend.
Mama, yeah. So then I feel bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a little too harsh on them sometimes.
Right.
But, yeah.
Looking back now, hindsight's 2020. Are there things that you saw in your mom and your dad that maybe you didn't give them grace for that you would now because you're a parent?
Yeah, looking back, they were parents themselves trying to figure out how to parent. Like, this was their first go around too.
Right.
And looking back, I was like, I should have been a lot nicer to both of them at times.
Yeah. And so how are your relationships with them now?
They're good.
Yeah.
I'm trying really hard to work on it with Mom. Me and her still butt heads at times, I think, because we're alike in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But me and my dad are alike in a lot of ways too that people just don't know.
Yeah.
So
I know your kids
good.
love their Pop and their Mimi. For
yeah.
Sure. They love them. If you had to go back and tell yourself a few things, what are some things you think you would tell yourself, like younger Jade?
one would have been calm down.
It's not that serious.
Right? It's really not. Two, I would have probably tried to get closer to my siblings. Just because I was trying to run away from what was going on at home.
Even though you were taking care of them.
Right.
Because you totally stepped up as mom.
Right.
And you still do that. Like, you still
probably
make
a little too much.
Yeah.
Lainey gets annoyed with me. Even
Right.
Pierce, I talk to both of them every day.
And they're grown. Like, they're adults.
Maybe Pierce every other day, but me and Lainey FaceTime at least 3 to 4 times a day.
And you're still mom. But it's just,
In some aspects.
it's just natural for you to do
right.
that. Right.
And then Pierce, he's like, can you please stop calling me? And I was like, I call you once a day. Like, that's really not that much. I was like, and I make sure I call you right after you get off work, but not like right after you get off work. But like, I know you're not about to go to bed. He was like,
Right.
okay, Jade. I'm like, one day you're going to miss having me call you. And he's like,
spoken like a true mom.
And he's like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Like,
But even in the midst of that, you wish you would have gotten closer to them.
yeah, maybe been there for them more because I just wanted everything about me, being a middle child.
Yeah. Did y'all ever have conversations amongst yourselves about stuff, or did you all just kind of deal with it on your own?
I feel like we all three had different ways of expressing what we were going through. Pierce, and that time, he was very close, going to church, going just on the right path. I feel like Pierce was really doing the right thing when we were going through all that.
Yeah.
Lainey was more so just the emotional one, crying.
And she was younger too.
Right. She was just like, she didn't get as much attention, if that makes sense. So I think that really affected her that way. And mine was just rah, 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 rah. So we were all three in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we're still close.
Yeah.
So.
Like, why do you think you were so angry?
I think I was just angry because I wasn't being able, like, going to therapy. Yes, you can tell them things, but you cannot tell them everything.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, therapists, I don't believe, like, yeah, they are there to listen to you, but they still have to report certain things.
Right. Gotcha.
So you can't tell them truly everything. So there's still stuff like I kept in that nobody knew.
Right.
So I think just keeping in,
Just
and I was able to
built up.
lash out on my mom a lot.
Yeah.
And that's very terrible. I'm sorry,
Right.
Mom, if you're watching this.
Aw,
I'm very
look
sorry
at
now.
that. Yeah, and I know your mom and your dad both have lots of regrets, and they've expressed that, and they're doing life the way they're doing it right now. They're proud of you guys. You three
I
have
hope so.
you three are doing amazing things in your life. What now that you have your own family, now that you're a wife, now that you have kids, what do you think? What do you hope that your kids walk away from your family experience when they get your age? Like, what do you hope that they can say when Liliana and Legend are your age about the family you have now?
That we loved them. I know that's pretty simple, but my family may fight a lot, but we love hard. On both sides of my family, we love very hard. And I just want them to be able to say that they could come to me for everything.
Yeah.
Because there was times I couldn't go to my parents for a lot of stuff because I felt Dad would get mad and then Mom just wouldn't understand. Or she would understand and then she'd probably advise me to do things I shouldn't do because she was my friend.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Do you find that you do things now as a parent totally different than the way your mom and dad did because of what you experienced in some regards?
When it comes to parenting, I feel like I'm like my dad a lot.
Okay.
Just more so very strict. Like I have high expectations, but then I look back and I'm like, my kid is 3. I should not be making sure this little boy is this, like, every time I keep a kid, my grandma is like, all right, they're at Jade's boot camp. And I'm like, they need manners. Like they need to do this.
Right.
They need to do that. But looking back, like
he's 3.
He's 3. I guess like I should really calm down a little bit.
So you think you do a little bit more like Dad?
Yeah, just more so strict, have manners, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I still want them to know that I love them and they can come to me.
Right.
Like my mom.
Absolutely.
And I think that's just all moms.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just the nature.
Yeah.
Because we carry that, we carry that soft heartedness of God and his character. We carry it more than men do. Not that men don't carry it, but women just carry that
it's just
softer.
in us.
It's totally in us. What does looking at your mom and dad's marriage and then their divorce, how has that affected your marriage with you and Will? Or has it?
Well, we both come from broken homes.
Okay.
His parents are divorced and mine are divorced. So I think our biggest goal is like to make sure our children don't come from a broken home either. And I keep telling him that. I'm like, I don't want our kids coming from a broken home like us. So I just like try to instill in him and encourage him that we got it through anything. So
yeah. And he's very quiet. He's very soft.
Well,
I know, but like when you first get to know him and stuff, like
he doesn't talk much.
He's a lot more quieter than you. You guys balance each other well.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. What are when you look back over your life and you think about some of the relationships that you were in and places you were at and stuff, what made Will different from the rest of them?
Oh my gosh, that's a whole list over here. Well, for one, he's more patient. He's just a patient guy. He's quiet. And I'm used to people who are like me, like on edge, angry, want to fight. And then Will's just like, okay. Like he's very nonchalant. So I think that he, like you said, he balances me out. Yeah. I mean, I have kids with him, so that's totally different for me too.
Right.
Us being first together and then looking at us now with children, we've grown so much. I think we love each other way more now than we did when we first met.
Right.
I think because we've got to know each other. Because truly, when we got together and I got pregnant, I truly did not know a lot about him.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew the basics, his name, his favorite color, like his favorite football team, but I didn't know a lot about him. But over the years, I've got really close with him. And he comes from a good family.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, his mom's sweet.
I love his mom.
Love his mom.
Shout out Miss Darlene.
We
if
like
you're
you
gonna
a
watch
lot.
this.
So you mentioned earlier that this year you've really kind of have encountered God. Tell us about that. What does that
I
look
remember
like?
the first time I truly encountered him. Maybe I have heard him before, and I was just like, oh, that's myself telling me this and that. But I remember praying. I was like, Lord, these people get on TikTok, and and like you speak to them, and you tell them all this stuff. I was like, I've never heard you. I don't think. So I was like, Lord, just speak to me, And oh my gosh, a few hours later, it was like midnight, and I'm like, like what? And I thought it was myself telling me, get up and go read your Bible. Get up and go read your Bible. And I just laid there and I was like, no, I'm not getting up. But I was like, that's Jesus telling me to get up. And then like the song, I don't know if you know it, The Presence of the Lord is Here. I don't know if his name is Byron something. I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
But that kept playing in my head. And I'm like, what is going on? So I got up. I was like, I really do not want to get up and do this.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be sleeping. Like,
Right.
That's
I was
usually
like, my
when he
kids are
talks.
about to get up.
Yeah.
It's midnight. What do you mean? So anyway, I started reading my Bible and I came across a passage that talked about waking up in the midnight hours. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Jesus just spoke to me.
The midnight.
But I have found that my time with Jesus is after the kids go to bed.
Yeah.
It might be 11 or 12 o'clock, but that's when I truly...
can just stop the world and just spend time with him.
Right.
And what is it about those moments? Like what happens in those moments?
It's just peace. It's quiet. And I'm able to really read my Bible and understand it somewhat.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. And hearing his voice, how has that affected your life? Like
It makes me stop and listen a lot more.
Okay.
Like stop second guessing a lot of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And have you seen any changes in your life and in the patterns? And I know you just said second guessing, but like in your thought patterns or anything like that, the more you spend time with him, the more you encounter him, are you seeing subtle changes in your life? Are
I
there
would
big
say
changes?
yes. I don't worry as much.
Yeah.
And I've made it a point to read my Bible every single day.
Yeah.
Even it could be a random book. I'm just going to flip to it and start reading it. Like I have wrote down here, like here recently, I feel like the closer I want to get to God, the more the devil is attacking
Always.
me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. So then again, I'm going through more spiritual warfare here recently. And it makes so much sense from like when I was told that.
Yeah.
So I remember I was just like self-worth issues, just talking in my head like, oh, I can't do this. I'm not worthy of this and that. And so I was like, let me just open my Bible. And I went to the book of Mark. And the first 5 chapters, God was healing people. And I'm like, that's my sign. He can heal me too.
That's right.
So it's just little stuff like that. He really speaks to me through that way. So
that's amazing. Like, hey, he healed those people in those 5 chapters.
Yep.
He can heal me.
Delivering all these people. He can do it for me.
That's right. And as he begins to, you spend time with him, he changes those mentalities, then you need less and less of that medication like you were talking about.
Right.
And to that point where there's going to be perfect peace and there's going to be, not that you don't worry. As a parent, you're still going to worry. You're still going to be consumed at times with things. You're still going to think how to, there's still going to be a little anxiousness. And I think that's okay, but it doesn't have to consume you. It doesn't have to be your identity.
Right.
So you said those used to be your identity. What do you think your identity is now?
Motherhood.
Okay.
That's truly my identity now. That's what I live and breathe is motherhood.
Being a mom.
Right.
Yeah. And a wife.
And a wife.
And a wife. And it looks good on you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
You too, girl.
Thanks. Is there anything else you want to share that maybe you don't feel like we touched on, or
I don't think
you want to
so.
express to anybody about anything? No?
Besides my favorite scripture.
Okay. Tell me your favorite scripture, girl.
I wrote it down so I don't miss any words.
Okay.
And I know it's pretty simple. We hear it a lot, but it's train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Because I always say motherhood is my ministry. And that's just a reminder to me to keep myself on track and my kids.
Right.
So.
And I think that's amazing that that's your story, because that wasn't your story for so long.
Right.
Right. That
if you knew me before children, you don't know me now.
Oh yeah. You are a completely different person. But yeah, when the first
By the grace of God.
By the grace of God. Because when I heard you were pregnant, I thought, oh Lord. Because we knew the old Jade. We knew the angry, the frustrated, and there was almost like this, what is the word I want to use? not this unsteadiness about you, but this unsteadiness. There was
Right.
always this movement happening. And there was, like you said, never peace. There was always this
Right.
anxiousness about
And
you.
I will say, I still do get a little anxious, and
Right.
and even Will's like, well, "You rush everything," and I'm like, "That's just me."
Yeah.
Like, ask anybody in my family; they're going to say Jade's always going,
Yeah.
but that's just me.
Yeah.
So I still have that
And
anxious,
that's
but I wouldn't
okay.
say it's anxiety. It's
Right.
just me being anxious.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I do believe, like, before you got kids, and even before you had kids, and even with Will, there was this moving constantly, always having to do somewhere and be somewhere. There was not this stillness.
Right.
And it's in that stillness and in that peace that we find what we need. Just like you said, when the kids go to bed and there's that stillness and that's quiet.
Yeah.
That's why I do God's coffee call in the mornings on the weekends, because everybody's still asleep.
Yep.
It's my peace, because at 9:30, I'm ready to be in bed. There's no peace at 9:30 in my house. They all still awake doing their thing. But at 5:15, nobody's awake. And there's this peace. And there's so much power that happens. God speaks to me so much in that peace and in that stillness.
So it's very important to find your time with Jesus.
That's right, girl. I love it. So let me ask you a few things.
Okay.
You've given us your favorite scripture.
Yes.
When you get to heaven, besides Jesus, who is the first person you want to talk to?
My dad's mom.
Your nanny.
Yes.
Okay. And anything you want to talk to her about, just talk to her. Because she passed away. You were pretty young, right?
Yeah, that's when my dad really started spiraling, is after her death. I can't remember the year.
Got you.
I can't remember. But it was before high school.
Got you.
So it was somewhere around mom's jail time, maybe after or before she went to jail. I cannot remember.
So
the
there was a lot of
specific time.
change that year.
Yeah,
in
too
that
much
area.
to remember.
Yeah. Okay. So Nani, we talked to Nani.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite story in the Bible? Like,
Okay.
No.
I will say,
okay.
last night I was reading the book of Job, and how he was just like, he feared Jesus. He was this great man. And then he faced a lot of things like his children dying, and then his health. And then I like stopped at chapter like 10.
Right.
But just so far, that's my favorite. Just
Yeah.
because he's going through all these things, and he even questions the Lord. But I think at the end of the day, he still comes back to, he knows who his Jesus is. So
Yeah, finish reading it because it gets really good. Yeah. It's really good. I think that you're gonna find a lot of yourself in Job at the end of it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that I never would have thought that, you saying Job, but I think you'll find by the end of the story, you'll see a lot of yourself in the story of Job and what the Lord does in Job's life. It's really cool.
Okay.
It's a story of redemption for real.
Cool.
Which I think is what your life is, kind of a theme of redemption. And I think you're a perfect example of, even though things don't go right, not because of our own doings, things happening around us, and even of our own doings as you got old enough to know better, that the Lord is still merciful.
Yes.
And he still will redeem it, and he'll still turn around and bless us and humble us and attend to us
Yeah.
in that moment of our life, in that season of our life. Awesome. Well, one last piece of advice I want you to give us.
Okay.
What would you tell a mom out there who's maybe feeling a little anxious, feeling a little, has the postpartum depression, is feeling they got the world on their shoulders? Like, what's one thing of encouragement you would tell a mom?
Two pieces of advice.
All right.
The first one is, it'll get better. It won't always be like that. They'll sleep through the night eventually. Eventually. They might be 5 years old, but they'll sleep through the night. It'll get better, I promise. And the second one would just be, pray about it. Even if you don't think you're getting a response, he'll respond when it's his time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be my advice. Pray about it.
That's good advice. That's perfect advice. Well, thank you so much for being here. You did
Thank you
amazing.
for having me.
We didn't cry much as I thought we
Just
were
like
going
10
to.
seconds in.
Just you know, just a little bit in. And I know that there's so much more. There's so many more levels to your story and depth. But just out of respect for people in your life. And we wanted to tell your story because that's their story to tell. And one day we will tell those stories. Yep. And I can't wait to tell those two stories because they are phenomenal stories. And so, but I thank you for being here. Thank you for being you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm glad I did this.
Me too. When I reached out to you and you said, I want you to share that. When I reached out to you and said, "Hey, will you share your testimony?" You responded back that you had just been talking to the Lord about your story.
Yes.
Tell me
So
about that.
I've always wanted to share what I've been through, but I was like, how do I even go about that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I might come off very like, wow, this girl's been through a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't want to come overbearing to people,
Right.
and them just push it farther away, like push them farther away.
Mm-hmm.
But I was praying about it, and I was like, Lord, like I really want to tell my story. I just don't know how. I don't know when. A few days later, you're like, hey, I have a question. And I'm like, okay. And then you asked me, and I was like, absolutely.
And it was I was literally just sitting at my desk and thinking about us filming some. And I'm like, I need somebody for Thanksgiving. And I'm like, I really wanted it to be family. Like because Thanksgiving is so big in our family.
Right.
We always had family at Gigi's and Papa's, and we always just had that time together. So Thanksgiving is very special to me.
Right.
And I just wanted to have family for Thanksgiving. And you just popped in my head, and I'm like, I'm taking a shot in the dark with this one for real. Because I really did expect you to say no. And so when you said, yeah, and I've been telling the Lord I want to share and give me an opportunity, I knew instantly. I'm like, okay, this is Jesus lined up. And
Yep.
and you've done phenomenal. You've done great. And I think people are going to be ministered to. I think people are going to understand you a little bit better that know you. But also, I think it's going to be an encouragement to others out there who maybe didn't grow up in ideal family or
Right.
ideal situations, or maybe they deal with anxiety and depression because it's everywhere now. Walking through anxiety and depression and that consuming world, to see somebody like you sitting with the joy of the Lord, healing you, walking you through that. It's a testament to maybe somebody out there that's walking through it. So again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here for this episode. I pray that your Thanksgiving is phenomenal. I pray that if you don't have family, that you'll find some family somewhere, hang out with some people. Don't do it alone. Remember that the Lord is gracious. He is compassionate. He will redeem what the enemy has tried to take and the enemy has tainted when we just surrender to him and just listen to him and give it over to him. If you're a mom out there or a dad doing it alone, pray about it. And it won't always look like this, as Jade said. It won't always be like this. Thank you so much. Again, would you please subscribe to us? Please like our channel, like this video, comment below, share it with your friends. I pray that you have a great Thanksgiving. I pray that your coffee is strong and that your heart is full and that you find peace in the silence with the Lord. Until next episode, I'll see you later.